The spotlight burned like accusation itself as 22-year-old Maya Johnson sat frozen on that massive stage, clutching a paper coffee cup with trembling hands, while 15,000 strangers stared at her torn jacket and worn-out shoes. She could feel every eye dissecting her, the mud stains on her jeans, the frayed edges of her second-hand scarf, the exhaustion carved into her dark skin after 3 sleepless nights under the Nashville overpass. The November wind had been merciless, and now the stage lights were just as cruel, exposing every detail of her poverty to this sea of judgment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chase Brennan's voice boomed through the speakers, dripping with theatrical cruelty. The country pop superstar strutted across the stage in his glittering silver shirt, his bleached blonde hair perfectly styled, his white teeth flashing under the lights. "Look what we found trying to sneak into my concert." The crowd's reaction split instantly. Some laughed, others gasped, many pulled out their phones to record what was clearly about to become a viral moment. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She hadn't been trying to sneak in. She'd been sleeping against the back wall of the Nissan Stadium when security dragged her to her feet, when Chase himself had spotted her from backstage and decided she would make perfect entertainment for his sold-out show. "You know what I think?" Chase circled her like a predator, his voice amplified across the outdoor venue. "I think everyone deserves a chance to perform at a Chase Brennan concert. Even—" He paused for effect, his lip curling. "Street trash." The slur hit Maya like a physical blow. She'd heard worse. 3 years of homelessness had taught her that cruelty was as common as rain in Tennessee. But never in front of 15,000 people. Never with cameras broadcasting her humiliation on giant screens. "So here's what we're gonna do," Chase announced, feeding off the crowd's mixed energy. "This young lady is gonna sing for us, a solo performance, right here, right now." He thrust the microphone toward her. "Let's see if she can actually hit a note, or if she's as worthless as she looks." Maya's hands shook so violently that coffee sloshed over the rim of her cup. She looked out at the massive crowd, some faces twisted in disgust, others in pity, a few in outright anger at what Chase was doing. The November night air bit through her thin jacket, but she was sweating under the lights. This was exactly what men like Chase Brennan did, she realized. They built their empires on making others feel small. They confused cruelty with entertainment, humiliation with humor. For 3 years, Maya had survived by being invisible, by avoiding eye contact, by staying in shadows, by never drawing attention. She'd learned that when you had nothing, the safest strategy was to be no one. But standing here on this stage, there was nowhere to hide. Chase held the microphone inches from her face, his cologne overwhelming, his smirk infuriating. "Come on, sweetheart, surely you know one song. Or did you spend your education money on—" He made an exaggerated show of looking her up and down. "Actually, I can't figure out what you spent it on." The crowd's laughter felt like broken glass. Maya thought about her mother, God rest her soul, who died of cancer 4 years ago, leaving Maya with nothing but medical debt and memories. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat, had sung gospel in the church choir with a voice that could make angels weep. She thought about her father, whoever he was, a man her mother never talked about. She thought about the music degree she'd been 2 semesters away from completing at Belmont University before her mother's illness drained everything. The student loans she could no longer pay. The dreams she'd carefully folded and put away like clothes that no longer fit. And she thought about the one thing Chase Brennan would never understand, that poverty doesn't make you worthless, that homelessness doesn't erase your humanity, that sometimes the people society throws away are the ones with the most valuable gifts. Maya set down her coffee cup on the stage floor with deliberate care. She stood up slowly, her knees protesting from too many nights on cold concrete. And she looked Chase Brennan directly in his smug, privileged face. "What song do you want?" Her voice was hoarse from disuse, but it carried through the microphone he still held toward her. Chase laughed, surprised she'd actually responded. "Oh, she speaks. Let's see." He turned to the crowd. "What should the homeless girl sing for us?" "Amazing Grace," someone shouted. "Summertime," another voice called. "How about something hard?" Chase's eyes gleamed with malicious inspiration. "How about I Will Always Love You, the Whitney Houston version?" He emphasized the last part, knowing he was setting an impossible challenge. "Can you handle that? Can you hit those notes, sweetheart?" The song was a vocal nightmare, a beloved classic that required range, control, and power that most professional singers struggled with. The final chorus demanded hitting a high note that had become Whitney's signature, a note that separated amateurs from legends. Chase himself had tried it once in an interview and failed spectacularly. The clip had gone viral, and he'd spent months downplaying it, claiming the key was wrong, that he'd been sick, that it was an unfair comparison. Now he was weaponizing that same song against a homeless young woman he assumed had no training, no talent, no chance. "I can sing it," Maya said quietly. "What was that?" Chase held the microphone closer, pretending he couldn't hear. "I said I can sing it." Louder this time. The crowd stirred. This wasn't going the way humiliations usually went. Victims were supposed to cry, to run, to break. They weren't supposed to accept the challenge. Chase's smile faltered for just a second before reconstructing itself. "Well then, let's see what you've got." He stepped back with exaggerated theatrical flair, gesturing to his band. "Boys, give the lady an intro." The band members exchanged uncomfortable glances. The keyboardist looked particularly disturbed by what was happening, but when Chase snapped his fingers impatiently, they began the familiar opening chords. Maya closed her eyes. In that moment, she wasn't on a stage in front of thousands. She was 8 years old again, sitting in the front pew of Mount Zion Baptist Church, watching her mother sing solo while the congregation swayed and wept. She was 15, winning the middle school talent show. She was 19, performing in Belmont's showcase concert, when professors told her she had once-in-a-generation potential. She was every moment music had saved her, had reminded her she was more than her circumstances. The introduction finished. The moment arrived, and Maya Johnson began to sing, "If I Should Stay." Her voice emerged like dawn breaking, quiet at first, almost fragile, carrying the weight of 3 years of silence and survival. But there was something in it, something that made the closest audience members stop laughing immediately. "I would only be in your way." Richer now, fuller, the natural resonance of someone who understood every word they were singing. Maya's eyes remained closed, but tears began tracking down her cheeks, not from shame, but from the sheer release of finally using her voice again. "So I'll go, but I know—" The note climbed, and Chase's smirk began to crack. This wasn't what was supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to actually be able to sing. "I'll think of you each step of the way." The first chorus arrived, and Maya opened her eyes. She looked directly at Chase Brennan, this man who thought cruelty was entertainment, who believed his privilege gave him the right to humiliate others. And she sang, "And I will always love you." The note soared into the November night like a bird released from captivity, pure, powerful, effortless. The kind of voice that doesn't come from training alone. It comes from somewhere deeper, from survival, from pain transformed into something beautiful. The stadium went absolutely silent. Chase's mouth opened slightly. His microphone hand dropped to his side. Even the band stopped playing for a beat, stunned, before scrambling to catch up. Maya continued, and with each line, she reclaimed her dignity. With each note, she reminded everyone watching that talent doesn't care about your address. That gift doesn't discriminate. That sometimes God plants the most extraordinary flowers in the most unexpected soil. The second verse built higher. The bridge soared. And then came the final chorus, the moment Whitney had made legendary, the note that Chase himself couldn't hit, the impossible standard he'd set specifically to watch her fail. Maya took a breath, and she shattered the ceiling. And will always love you. The note pierced the night sky, clear, controlled, impossibly high, held for what seemed like forever. It wasn't just technically perfect, it was transcendent. It was the sound of every no she'd ever heard transformed into yes. Every door slammed in her face, blown wide open. Every night she'd cried herself to sleep under that overpass turned into triumph. When she finished, holding that final note until her lungs burned, then letting it fade like a shooting star, disappearing into darkness, the silence that followed was absolute. 15,000 people stood frozen in shocked disbelief. Chase Brennan's face had gone pale under his stage tan, and then the stadium erupted. The applause started like distant thunder and built into a roar that shook the very foundations of Nissan Stadium. 15,000 people were on their feet, screaming, crying, holding their phones high as they captured what would become the most watched viral video of the year. The band members were applauding too, tears streaming down the keyboardist's face. Even the security guards who dragged Maya on stage stood frozen in awe, but Chase Brennan wasn't clapping. He stood there in his glittering shirt, his perfect hair suddenly looking ridiculous under the lights, his carefully constructed image crumbling in real time. His hand gripped the microphone so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Maya opened her eyes, her chest heaving from the exertion of that final, impossible note. She looked at Chase, and for the first time since being dragged onto this stage, she felt something other than fear or shame. She felt powerful. That was... Chase started to speak, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat, trying to regain control of his own show. That was... unexpected. The crowd's cheering intensified at his obvious discomfort. They could smell blood in the water. I mean, let's not get carried away here. Chase forced a laugh that sounded hollow through the speakers. It was okay, I guess. A little pitchy in places. Bullshit! Someone screamed from the crowd. She was perfect, another voice shouted. You could never, a third person yelled, and the crowd erupted in agreement. Chase's face flushed red. This was his concert, his stage, his audience. How dare they turn on him for some homeless girl who... What's your name? The question came from his own guitarist, Marcus, a black man in his 40s who'd played with Chase for 5 years and had never once interrupted a show. Maya turned to face him, surprised. Maya Johnson. Maya Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. Marcus raised his guitar high. Give it up for the real voice of the night. The stadium went absolutely insane. Chase's face twisted with rage. Marcus, what the hell do you think you're... I think I'm done, boss. Marcus unplugged his guitar with deliberate calm. I've put up with your racist jokes, your arrogance, your treatment of staff like they're subhuman, but humiliating a homeless young woman on stage for entertainment? He shook his head. That's where I draw the line. I quit. The crowd's noise shifted, excited murmurs, shocked gasps, thousands of phones still recording every second. You can't quit in the middle of a show, Chase sputtered. Watch me. Marcus handed his guitar to a stunned stagehand and walked over to Maya. Miss Johnson, you have a gift from God. Don't let anyone ever make you forget that. He pulled out his wallet and pressed several bills into her hand. Get yourself somewhere warm tonight. You deserve so much better than this. Maya's eyes filled with fresh tears. Thank you, she whispered. Marcus nodded and walked off the stage to thunderous applause. Chase stood alone now, his backing band looking uncomfortable. His carefully planned show derailed completely. He could see his manager in the wings making frantic phone calls, probably already dealing with social media blowback. Well, that was dramatic, Chase tried to joke, but his voice had lost all its power. Some people just can't handle a little entertainment. Now let's get back to what you all came here for. Let her sing again, someone shouted. The chant started small, but grew exponentially. Maya! 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 Within seconds, 15,000 voices were demanding not Chase Brennan, but the homeless young woman he'd tried to humiliate. Chase's performance smile cracked completely. This is my concert. You paid to see me. We want refunds then, someone yelled back. Maya! 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 The chant was deafening now, a wall of sound that drowned out everything else. Chase looked desperately toward his manager, toward security, toward anyone who could help him regain control. But Maya was already walking toward the edge of the stage. Wait! Chase grabbed her arm. The touch was rough, possessive. You don't just walk off my stage without... Maya turned slowly, looked down at his hand on her threadbare jacket, then back up at his face. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but the microphone Marcus had handed her caught every word. Let me go. The authority in those 3 words made Chase's hand drop immediately. You brought me up here to humiliate me, Maya said, and now she was addressing not just Chase, but the entire stadium. You thought that because I'm homeless, because I'm black, because I have nothing, that I was nothing, that I was garbage you could use for laughs. Chase opened his mouth to protest, but she continued, But you forgot something important. Maya's voice grew stronger. You forgot that people aren't valuable because of what they own. You forgot that dignity isn't something you can take away with cruel words and spotlights. You forgot that sometimes the people you throw away are the ones with the most to give. The stadium was silent again, but this time it was the silence of 15,000 people holding their breath. I don't hate you, Mr. Brennan, Maya said, and she meant it. I actually feel sorry for you, because you have everything. Fame, money, this stage, and you're still so empty inside that you need to tear down others to feel big. That's the saddest thing I've ever seen. A single tear ran down Maya's face, but she was smiling. My mother taught me that how people treat you says nothing about your worth and everything about theirs. She was right. Maya set the microphone down gently on the stage floor next to her abandoned coffee cup, and she walked off. The crowd's response was instantaneous and overwhelming. They cheered like she'd just won the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics combined. They screamed her name. They held up their phones like lighters at a concert's emotional peak. Chase Brennan stood alone in the center of his own stage, surrounded by thousands of people who no longer saw him as a star. They saw him exactly as he was, small, cruel, and desperately trying to hide his own inadequacies behind manufactured superiority. We still have an hour of show left, Chase said weakly into his microphone. Refund, someone shouted. Maya was the show. You're cancelled, Brennan! His manager was frantically waving from the wings, making cutting motions across his throat. The show was over. Chase Brennan's sold-out concert, the one that was supposed to cement his status as country pop royalty, had just become the biggest disaster of his career, and it was all being recorded. Backstage. 30 minutes later, Maya sat in a small room usually reserved for equipment storage, wrapped in an oversized jacket someone had given her. Her hands were still shaking, but not from cold anymore. From adrenaline, from shock, from the surreal reality of what had just happened. There was a knock on the door. "Miss Johnson," a woman's voice, professional but kind. "My name is Patricia Williams. I'm a talent agent with Premier Artists. May I come in?" Maya's heart raced. Yes?" The door opened to reveal an elegant black woman in her 50s, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing an expression of barely contained excitement. "Maya Johnson," Patricia said, sitting down across from her. "I've been in this business for 30 years. I've discovered Grammy winners, platinum-selling artists, and genuine stars." She leaned forward. "And I have never, in all those years, heard a voice like yours." Maya couldn't speak. This felt like a dream, the kind she used to have before homelessness taught her that dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. "That video is already at 10 million views and climbing," Patricia continued, pulling out her phone to show Maya. "Every major news outlet is covering it. Good Morning America wants you on tomorrow. Ellen's People called, James Corden, Jimmy Fallon." She paused. "The world wants to know who Maya Johnson is." "I'm nobody," Maya whispered. "You're a voice," Patricia interrupted firmly. "You're a story. You're proof that talent doesn't care about your zip code or your bank account. You're everything the music industry claims to celebrate but usually ignores." She pulled out a business card. "I want to represent you. I want to help you build the career you deserve." Maya stared at the card. "I don't have money for... I work on commission. You don't pay me unless you're getting paid." Patricia smiled. "And trust me, if we do this right, you're going to be getting paid very well." It was too much, too fast. Maya's head spun. "I need to think," she managed. "Of course." Patricia stood. "But Maya, that video isn't going away. By tomorrow morning, you'll be one of the most famous people in America. You can either let that happen to you, or you can take control of it." She pressed the card into Maya's hand. "Call me when you're ready, day or night." After Patricia left, Maya sat alone with the business card, with the borrowed jacket, with the impossible reality of the last 2 hours. Her phone, an ancient Nokia she'd found in a dumpster that could barely text, buzzed with notifications it couldn't properly display. She had 17 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. The door opened again. This time it was Marcus, the guitarist who'd quit. "Hey," he said gently, "I wanted to check on you before I left." "You quit your job for me," Maya said, the weight of it hitting her. "You didn't have to—" "Yes, I did." Marcus sat down. "I have a daughter your age. If someone treated her the way Chase treated you tonight, I'd hope another father would stand up for her too." He handed her a folded piece of paper. "This is the number for a friend of mine who runs a women's shelter. They have space tonight if you need it. Hot meal, warm bed, no questions asked." Maya took the paper, her hands trembling. "Everyone's being so kind. I don't understand." "You reminded us what matters," Marcus said simply. "In a world full of Chase Brennans, people who think cruelty is strength and humiliation is entertainment, you showed us what real dignity looks like." He stood to leave. "Whatever you decide to do next, Maya Johnson, you do it with your head high. You earned that tonight." After he left, Maya sat in the silence of the equipment room, processing everything. 3 hours ago, she'd been invisible. Nobody, just another homeless person society had decided wasn't worth seeing. Now, apparently, the world couldn't look away. Her phone buzzed again. She managed to open one text message from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Amanda from TMZ. We'll pay $50,000 for exclusive interview. Call immediately." $50,000. More money than Maya had seen in her entire life. She thought about her mother, who'd worked herself to death and never saw a fraction of that amount. She thought about the music degree gathering dust in some university filing cabinet. She thought about 3 years of invisible nights under that overpass, of hunger and cold and fear. And she thought about that moment on stage, when she'd opened her mouth and reclaimed every piece of herself that the world had tried to take. Maya Johnson stood up, pocketed the business card and the shelter information, and walked out of Nissan Stadium into the November night. Cameras flashed immediately, reporters shouted questions, security tried to push them back. But Maya just smiled, wrapped the borrowed jacket tighter, and kept walking. She'd survived 3 years of being invisible. She could survive being seen. End of Chapter 2. The viral video changes everything, but fame comes with its own dangers. In the final chapter, Maya must decide, embrace the spotlight that almost destroyed her or disappear back into the shadows. And what happens when Chase Brennan refuses to accept his fall from grace? 6 months can change everything. Maya Johnson stood in the green room of the Grand Ole Opry, staring at her reflection in the mirror and barely recognizing the woman looking back. Her natural curls had been professionally styled, framing her face in soft waves. The burgundy dress she wore was elegant but comfortable, nothing like the torn jacket and muddy jeans from that November night. But it was her eyes that showed the biggest change. They held confidence now, the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to apologize for it. 5 minutes, Miss Johnson, the stage manager called through the door. Maya took a deep breath. The Grand Ole Opry, the most sacred stage in country music. The same stage that had launched legends and defined careers for nearly a century. And tonight, she would perform her debut single, a song she'd written in that women's shelter 6 months ago when the world was screaming her name, but she was still trying to remember her own voice. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Breathe. You've got this. The world is watching, but you've already proven you can handle it. Break a leg, superstar. Maya smiled. Patricia had become more than her agent. She'd become a mentor, a guardian, and something close to family. She'd guided Maya through the insanity of those first weeks, when every media outlet wanted a piece of her story, when record labels fought over signing rights, when the world couldn't decide if she was a victim, a hero, or just another viral sensation destined to disappear. Another text came through, this one from Marcus. Remember what I told you. Sing for that little girl under the overpass who thought she'd lost her voice forever. Sing for her. Maya's eyes misted. Marcus had become her unofficial godfather in this new world, introducing her to the right people, warning her about the wrong ones, and never once asking for anything in return except that she stay true to herself. A knock on the door. Maya, it's me. She opened it to find Jennifer Cole, the reigning queen of country music and tonight's host. The legendary singer smiled warmly. I wanted to wish you luck before you go on, and to tell you something. She stepped inside and closed the door. 20 years ago, I was exactly where you are, terrified, doubting, wondering if I deserved to be on that stage. She took Maya's hands. You deserve this. Not because of that viral video, not because of the story, but because you have something that can't be manufactured or bought, a voice that moves souls. Trust it. Thank you, Maya whispered, squeezing her hands back. Also, Jennifer's expression turned serious, you should know Chase Brennan is here tonight. Maya's stomach dropped. What? He bought a front-row ticket. My security team confirmed it an hour ago. Jennifer watched her carefully. I can have him removed if you want. Just say the word. Maya's mind raced. She hadn't seen Chase since that night 6 months ago, though she'd certainly heard about him. His career had imploded spectacularly. Concert cancellations, dropped sponsorships, a record label that quietly let his contract expire. The video of him humiliating her had been viewed over 200 million times, spawning think pieces about privilege, racism, and the toxicity of celebrity culture. He'd become a cautionary tale, a punchline, everything he'd tried to make her. "No," Maya said finally. "Let him stay." Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Maya straightened her shoulders. "He gave me this platform even if he didn't mean to. Let him watch what I built from it." On stage, 10 minutes later, the Grand Ole Opry was packed with 3,000 people, industry professionals, country music royalty, and fans who'd won lottery tickets for this historic night. Every major network was broadcasting live. Social media was exploding with anticipation. Jennifer Cole walked to center stage, her presence commanding immediate silence. Ladies and gentlemen, 6 months ago, a video went viral that reminded us all of something important: that true talent doesn't need permission, validation, or the right circumstances to exist. It just needs to be heard. She paused. Tonight, we're about to hear something extraordinary. Please welcome to the Grand Ole Opry stage, for her national debut performance, Maya Johnson. The applause was thunderous as Maya walked out, her heels clicking on the legendary wooden floor that had held everyone from Hank Williams to Dolly Parton. The lights were bright, but she'd learned to love them instead of fear them. The crowd was massive, but she'd learned that singing to thousands was the same as singing to one. You just had to mean every word. And there, in the front row, sat Chase Brennan. He'd aged in 6 months. The boyish charm had hardened into something bitter. His expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his posture, the desperation in his eyes. He was watching her the way a drowning man watches a rescue boat that might not turn around. Maya met his gaze for one long moment. Then she turned to the audience and smiled. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she said, her voice steady and warm. 6 months ago, I was homeless, sleeping under an overpass in Nashville, convinced that my dream of being a singer was dead. I'd lost everything: my mother, my education, my home, my hope. She paused. "And then something happened that changed my life forever." The audience leaned forward, hanging on every word. "Someone tried to humiliate me. Someone thought that because I had nothing, I was nothing. Someone put me on a stage, in front of 15,000 people specifically to watch me fail." Maya's voice grew stronger. "But here's what that person didn't know. You can't humiliate someone who knows their worth. You can't break someone who's already survived being broken, and you can't silence a voice that was born to sing." The crowd erupted in applause. In the front row, Chase looked down at his hands. "This song I'm about to sing," Maya continued, "I wrote it in a women's shelter the night after that concert. I was scared, overwhelmed, and honestly angry. Angry at the world, at my circumstances, at every person who'd ever looked at me and seen garbage instead of a human being." She gripped the microphone stand. "But then I realized something. Anger is just pain that hasn't found its purpose yet. So I took all that pain, all that anger, all those years of being invisible, and I turned it into something beautiful." She nodded to the band, and they began the introduction, a haunting melody built on acoustic guitar and cello, simple but powerful. "This song is called Still Standing," Maya said softly. "And it's for everyone who's ever been counted out, thrown away, or told they weren't enough." The music swelled, and Maya began to sing. "You can take my home. You can take my name. You can dress me up in your cruelty and shame. You can point your lights. You can call the crowd. You can try to break me, but I'm singing loud." Her voice filled the Opry with the same power that had stunned 15,000 people 6 months ago. But now it was refined, controlled, and absolutely devastating in its emotional honesty. "'Cause I'm still standing when the smoke clears. Still fighting through the bitter years, you threw your stones, but I built a wall, made of every time you watched me fall. I'm still standing. I'm still here. I'm still everything you fear. In the front row, Chase Brennan's face had gone pale. His hands gripped the armrests of his seat so tightly his knuckles were white. This wasn't just a song. It was a reckoning, a mirror held up to every cruel thing he'd ever done. You thought my worth was in what I owned. You thought my voice was just a loan. You thought that poverty made me small. But baby, I was always 10 feet tall. The bridge built higher, Maya's voice climbing effortlessly into a register that made the audience gasp. The live orchestra swelled behind her, every musician giving their absolute best to support this moment. So take your spotlight, take your stage, take your privilege and your rage. I don't need your validation now. I learned to give that to myself somehow. I'm still standing, can't you see? You never had power over me. Tears streamed down faces throughout the audience. Jennifer Cole stood in the wings, openly weeping. Even the camera operators were wiping their eyes while trying to keep their shots steady. The final chorus approached, and Maya looked directly at Chase one more time. But this time there was no anger in her gaze, only pity, only the sad understanding that hurt people, and Chase Brennan was clearly hurting. I'm still standing when the smoke clears. Her voice soared into the rafters, carrying every ounce of pain she'd survived, every night she'd gone hungry, every moment she'd felt invisible, and transforming it all into pure, transcendent power. Still fighting through the bitter years, you threw your stones, but I built a wall made of every time you watched me fall. I'm still standing. I'm still here. I'm everything you couldn't break. I'm every dream you couldn't take. I'm still standing. And I'm not going anywhere. The final note rang out like a bell, pure and clear and absolutely perfect, held until the very last breath in Maya's lungs. Then silence, complete, absolute, breathtaking silence. And then the Grand Ole Opry exploded. 3,000 people leapt to their feet, screaming, crying, applauding so hard their hands hurt. The standing ovation lasted for 7 full minutes. An Opry record. Grown men sobbed. Industry veterans who'd seen everything looked stunned. Social media melted down with reactions. Maya stood there, tears streaming down her face, and let it wash over her. Not the applause. She'd learned that applause was fleeting. But the moment. The full-circle journey from that cold November night under the overpass to this warm June evening on the most sacred stage in country music. She'd made it. Not because someone gave her permission, not because she got lucky, but because she'd refused to let cruelty define her, refused to let poverty diminish her, refused to let anyone tell her she was less than she knew herself to be. In the front row, Chase Brennan stood alone, not applauding, just standing, looking at the woman he'd tried to destroy, who'd transformed his cruelty into her liberation. After the performance, after the interviews, after the celebration backstage, Maya found herself alone in her dressing room. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a peaceful exhaustion. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," she called, expecting Patricia or Marcus. But it was Chase Brennan. He stood in the doorway, looking smaller somehow than he had on that stage 6 months ago. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like shame. "I know I have no right to be here," he said quietly. "Your security is about to remove me, but I needed to say something first." Maya didn't respond, just waited. "I'm sorry." The words came out broken. "I'm sorry for what I did to you, for what I've done to countless others, for building a career on making people feel small so I could feel big." He took a shaky breath. "Watching you tonight, hearing that song, I saw myself clearly for the first time in years, and I'm disgusted." "Good," Maya said simply. Chase flinched, like she'd slapped him. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that you were right that night. About all of it, I'm empty. I do have everything and nothing at the same time." He turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, you have the most extraordinary voice I've ever heard. You always did. That's why I was so threatened by you." He walked out before Maya could respond. She sat there for a long moment, processing. Then she pulled out her phone and texted Patricia. "I want to start a foundation for homeless youth who want to pursue music. Full scholarships, housing assistance, mental health support, everything I needed and didn't have." Patricia's response came immediately. "Already working on it. Great minds think alike. We'll call it the Still Standing Foundation." Maya smiled. 1 year later, the headline in Rolling Stone read, "Maya Johnson's debut album Still Standing breaks records, goes triple platinum." But Maya wasn't reading headlines anymore. She was too busy. She stood in the rehearsal space of the Still Standing Foundation's new Nashville facility, working with 15 young people, black, white, Latino, Asian, all from different backgrounds but united by poverty and talent and dreams that society had tried to convince them were impossible. "Remember," she told them, demonstrating a breathing technique, "your voice doesn't come from your throat. It comes from here." She placed a hand on her heart. "From every experience that made you who you are. From every night you survived. From every time someone told you no and you decided that just meant not yet." A young girl in the back raised her hand. "Miss Johnson, do you ever think about that night? The concert?" Maya smiled. "Every day. Not because it was the worst thing that happened to me. It wasn't. I've survived much worse. I think about it because it taught me the most important lesson of my life." "What was that?" another student asked. "That other people's cruelty says nothing about your worth and everything about theirs. That talent doesn't need permission, that your voice matters, whether anyone's listening or not." Maya looked at each of them. "And that sometimes the moments that are meant to destroy you become the moments that set you free." Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Turn on the news, now." Maya excused herself and pulled up the news on her phone. The headline made her stop breathing. "Chase Brennan enters rehabilitation facility, releases public apology." The video showed Chase, looking genuinely broken, reading a statement. "I've spent the last year in therapy, confronting the racism, privilege and cruelty that defined my career. I hurt Maya Johnson and countless others. No apology can undo that harm, but I'm committed to doing the work to become better. I'm donating my entire remaining fortune to the Still Standing Foundation, and I'm stepping away from public life to focus on genuine growth and accountability." Maya watched it twice. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She hoped he meant it. She hoped he would actually do the work, become better, learn that redemption isn't about grand gestures, but about daily choices, to be kinder, more aware, more human. Because if she'd learned anything from her journey from that overpass to the Grand Ole Opry, it was this: transformation is possible for anyone willing to face their truth. Even Chase Brennan, especially Chase Brennan. That evening, Maya stood on the small balcony of her modest Nashville apartment. Nothing extravagant, despite her success, because she remembered too well what it was like to have nothing. The June sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The city hummed with music and life and possibility. She thought about her mother, who'd never lived to see this moment, but who'd given her everything she needed to survive it. She thought about those 3 years under the overpass, when survival was the only goal and dreams seemed like luxuries from another lifetime. She thought about that November night when a man tried to break her and accidentally helped her rebuild herself stronger than before. And she thought about all the young people in her foundation right now, practicing their voices, dreaming their dreams, learning that their circumstances don't define their destiny. Maya Johnson smiled and began to sing softly, just for herself, just because she could, because she was still standing, and she always would be. The end, Maya Johnson's debut album, Still Standing, went on to win 4 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year. The Still Standing Foundation has since provided full scholarships and support to over 500 young musicians from underserved communities. Chase Brennan completed 2 years of intensive therapy and now works quietly as a counselor for addiction and rehabilitation, having never returned to performing. Marcus continues to tour internationally while mentoring young artists. And on cold November nights in Nashville, if you listen carefully near the old overpass on Fifth Avenue, you can still hear echoes of a voice that refused to be silenced, a reminder that transformation is always possible and that sometimes the most beautiful songs are born from the deepest pain.